Hey there, Slumpbusters. It's your host, Juju Talk Sports, and time for episode 76 of the Slumpbuster Podcast. Very loaded show, very inspirational show, and one that I'm happy to bring you. Our first guest is going to be Aaron Golub. Now, Aaron became the first legally blind Division I college football player back when he suited up for Tulane University. And he's here on the Slumpbuster Podcast. We are very excited to have him. Great conversation we have, and one that I am really excited to share with my friends. And I really want you guys to share this one because I think this is one of our most important podcasts. And again, I can't thank Aaron enough for coming on the show. Our second guest is going to be Andrew Hagenbaugh. I guess he's not really much of a guest anymore. He's now part of the Slumpbuster Media team, and we're more than happy to have him. Andrew is going to be part of our fantasy football department. He's going to be doing all the proper things to make sure that you take home that chip at the end of the year. So we talk some fantasy football. We break down NFL Week 10. But before we do that, obviously, guys, it is time to give a shout out to those sponsors, those people that are dedicated to helping you bust the slump. That's why we're here. That's why we do this. For you guys, no matter what slump you're going through in life, we're here to bust it. Here's a couple promo codes. Well, actually, here's the main promo code you want to use. That's going to be promo code SLUMP. Save 20% off plus free shipping and handling. Where you ask, where am I going to save 20% plus shipping and handling? At manscaped.com, the number one in men's grooming, the company that sells the number one tools for those family jewels. Now, come on, don't be a chump. Use promo code SLUMP. They have the Lawnmower 3.0. They have the Crop Preserver. They have those anti-chafing boxer briefs. They have tons of great products. And trust me, fellas, this isn't just an investment in yourself. This is for the ladies out there. You want the Crop Preserver. You want me smelling your best all day. So don't be selfish. Go out there. Get the best tools on the market. Make sure you're right because you ain't busting any slumps with your third-rate razor. So manscaped.com. Get on that. And once you've done that, check out Nature's Relief. Plenty of CBD companies have sprung up in recent years, and I'm sure they have fine products. But I'm here to tell you about a proven, organic, tested company. I'm talking about Nature's Relief, TX.com. Now, they have a wide variety of products, not just for yourself. It's Christmas is coming up. Let's think about doing some holiday shopping. Use promo code SLUMP. Save yourself some money on your next purchase, whether that be their nighttime gummies, their drops. Maybe you want to buy some CBD products for dogs. Well, guess what? They have it, folks. And if you use promo code SLUMP, you're going to save some money on it. Go ahead, invest, get in that holiday spirit. It is the season of giving. You don't feel like giving out CBD products? Fine. Well, how about giving out some coffee? CavemanCoffeeCo.com. Caveman is the Albuquerque, New Mexico-based organization, and I gotta say, they know what they're doing when it comes to brewing cold brew coffee. Their nitro cold brew, their pumpkin spice, they have the mammoth blends, the hibiscus teas. Honestly, hibiscus teas, Bryce Dallas Howard, she's always pitching them, and you know why she's pitching them? Because they're fantastic. So go ahead and use promo code SLUMP to save some money there. Now, I've told you how to save money. We're all happy that you save some money, but let's make some money now. Go to razorsport.com. Now, Razor, sign up for their free trial, and they're going to tell you exactly who to bet on and how to beat Vegas. How are they going to do this? Well, they have a wide variety of betting experts, handicappers, people that have bet against Vegas for years and know what they're doing. This is a worldwide sports betting network, people, and Razor Sport is dedicated to assisting you, giving you the right tools you need to come down with that dub on Sundays. Now go ahead and check them out, Razorsport, R-A-Z-E-R sport.com. And folks, I assure you, you're going to be very happy. Well, that's it. That's it. It is time to get into the episode. It is time to hashtag bust the slump.
Slumpbuster. Quiet on the set, make sure my mic is on. There is Dre and Juju Dog diving towards the pylon. Go for two, so damn rude, recognize authority. Spitting tips for fantasy, no way you're outscoring me. Bold predictions with conviction every single day. Sports addiction, no restriction, kicking game like Pele. He's the greatest, what's the basis? Pick an athlete, let's debate this game. Outrageous trading places, sudden death, take 10 paces. Turn and shoot, boys the truth, Mamba mentality. Future greats take their place, dreams become reality. Low and outside, knocked it out the park. Your boy discovered fire like a rock with a spark. Refs acting like Neanderthals. Phantom flags, nothing calls. Heartbreak losses, tragic falls. Every week discuss it all. Settle in, listen up. Free your time like Andrew Luck. Show's about to start. I suggest you buckle up.
Hey, Slumpbusters, welcome in. This guest I am really excited for. We've been trying to set this up for weeks. Finally found the time to do it. Aaron Golub, thank you for coming on, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
So I was reading some like your past interviews, and one that kind of like caught my eye was back in like 2014 before you even entered college. It was basically just kind of like asking you about how you feel about like the story and everything. And at the time, you kind of said you maybe like resented that it was such a constant question for you. But how has that kind of like shifted over the years now that we're looking at it from 2020?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in college and going into college, I had no interest in any of the media and any of the interviews, any of the speaking. I wanted to play football. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to be a student athlete. That was what I wanted to do. I was fortunate enough that a coach of mine said to me, if you can impact one other person with every interview that you do, then do every single interview that comes your way. And because of that, I've always done every single interview that's come my way. Eventually, after I graduated and I went into, the real world and I have a job now that I work in finance, I decided to pick up speaking as well because I said, I miss, the stage of football. How can I help others? How can I impact others? How can I make a side career? And I found speaking and I said, I can really impact a lot of other people. And so now I kind of seek out the interviews and the stages and the events to speak at.
And, in 2015 is when you made that history. So how is it that someone that does struggle with your particular like affliction finds himself loving a game that they may not even be able to fully enjoy, fully like see? How did you find that love of football?
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved football growing up. I would watch all the time, and I would be a little different than others. I would have to sit closer to the TV or something, but I grew up watching football. I grew up loving football, and it was just something that I wanted to do. And, when I started in seventh grade, I wasn't a very good football player, a very good athlete. I was a very undersized kid, but, I found the right position later on. I worked really hard in the weight room, on the field, in all aspects of becoming a Division I athlete, and it eventually paid off.
And so as far as that goes, so the position you played, long snapper, it's a position based on precision. Obviously, you make sure that the holder can get it perfectly. How did you find the art of long snapping? How did you fall into that?
Yeah, so sophomore year of high school, I was a offensive and defensive lineman still, and I was third string on junior varsity. And by sophomore year, you usually think if you're going to play Division I sports, you're going to be starting on varsity or at least playing a lot on varsity. And that just was not me. And I came to the decision that I'm tired of this. This isn't what my future is going to be like. And I found long snapping, and I said, if I can become good enough at this, then I might have an opportunity to play Division I football. And that was a really big might. And from there, long snapping is the same thing as kicking a field goal or punting a football or a golf swing or swinging a baseball bat. A repetitive motion that if you do thousands and thousands of times, it's muscle memory and you're going to do it every single time. And so it was just a lot of practice. I would show up to school every day at 5:30 in the morning and practice long snapping before school. And it's what I had to do. I had to get in those reps. I had to do all the work that no one else was doing if I wanted to be successful at it.
Since your story developed, I know I've heard other stories of other athletes that have dealt with blindness in terms of like making it to the football field. Jake Olsen is a prominent story. He plays for USC. Have you talked to Jake? Like, have you guys done any collaborations in the past?
I've talked to him once or twice. Yeah, so Jake is a phenomenal kid. I think it was 2 years after I played. He played, pretty sure in 2017, if that's right, at USC. And he's a great guy. I think we did a interview once together where they were kind of just asking us both questions about our journeys, had me give him some advice on, this is what my experiences was, maybe you should think about this or don't do this or do this. And it was a great experience. And, I've talked to him once or twice since then, but not a ton. But from what I've known of him and gathered, he's a really phenomenal person, and I hope that he continues to see a lot of success in his life.
How often do you have kids reach out to you? Because I feel as though a big thing on this, again, is the youth. You mentioned these interviews obviously impact people who struggle with all kinds of sorts of adversity. And I always think of kids who maybe have the same kind of passions, just want to do it. Maybe they're just unsure of themselves or trying to find the right confidence to be out there and just go out and do it.
Yeah, no, I definitely have kids reach out to me or try and get in touch with me. And, as long as I get the message, I respond to everyone. I'm always happy to help. I'm always happy to do what I can to impact others. And, I say it every single time I go on an interview or a stage or whatever it is, and my Instagram is at Aaron J. Golub. Send me a message. I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to help. I respond to all my messages. So, if for some reason I miss something, I'm sorry. Shoot me another one, but I respond to all my messages. So I'd be happy to help with anything.
One question I was asked to ask you was, how do you teach confidence to young kids who are trying and navigate their environment, still like learning the ins and outs of working through life, having to deal with this?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is forcing those kids to do things on their own. I think my parents did a phenomenal job when I was growing up of forcing me to do things on their own. They would rather see me struggle than do it for me. And so if it took me 20 minutes to tie a shoe when I was a little kid, they didn't care. They would do that because they didn't want to just do it for me and then not have me learn and not have me grow. I think the problem is when parents or teachers do every single thing for a kid, they don't learn to be independent. They don't get that confidence, and it affects them later on in life. Yes, it's a quick fix. Yes, it's easy to help that kid and you may feel bad, but it's really harming them in the long run.
So you would probably encourage like parents to take, I wouldn't say like more of a hands-off approach, but more of a approach that teaches kids by doing. Like
exactly. Challenge your kids. I mean, obviously, if it's getting to the point where they really can't do something, help them, but show them how to do it. Your kid is never going to learn if they don't do it themselves. And if you continue to do things for them their entire life, they're not going to understand how to do things on their own.
Growing up, like what were some of the toughest things you had to deal with in particular? Tell me about some of those stories.
Well, obviously, as you're younger, it's harder to deal with something like that than it is when you get older. I mean, I definitely struggled for a time where, I can't drive. So when I was younger, that definitely was a hard thing for me. I had to rely on others for rides. Now I don't care. It's easy. I wish I had Uber back when I was in high school. That would have been fantastic. I think it was just coming out or something, but wish I had that. But yeah, no, things like that, learning to cook was definitely really difficult, or just something simple, crossing a street. If it's a busy street, it definitely can be dangerous. And so it's the small things that were always the hardest, I think. And it was definitely harder to deal with when you're younger. But as you get older, I've lived with it my whole life, and they don't really affect me in any way anymore.
Now, we talked about confidence just moving around the household, and that's one thing, but you were out there on a football field with other huge human beings, other people that obviously have malice, and not really vicious malice, of course, because it's just a sport. It's just a game at the end of the day, but still, nonetheless, it's a physical demanding sport. How did you find that confidence being out there in that kind of like environment?
I think it comes down to two things. And the first thing is that if you practice it enough as a long snapper, you'll get it down and you'll know how to do it. And every single snap should be the same. The second is you really need to find a way to believe in yourself. If you are playing at the level that I played at Division I football, and especially if you have a disability, if you don't truly believe that you are the best person at the job, if you are the best person on your team, best person in the country at whatever position you play, then you are not going to be successful because you already have a disadvantage. And so you have to learn to toe the line between confidence and cocky. And you can't cross that line because being cocky has its own issues. And you never want to be the athlete or the person who's cocky. But you need to find a way to truly believe that you are the best at what you do and have that insane amount of confidence. That's really the only way, if you have a disadvantage, that you can be successful, if you truly believe in yourself. Because if you do, then you can accomplish anything. And I think that's one of the areas where people really lack.
Now, you were a walk-on Tulane. When you first went out there and talked to the coaching staff, how did those conversations go?
I talked to a ton of schools out of high school or during my senior year and junior year, and some schools were interested, some weren't. Some, when they found out my vision, weren't as interested anymore. I was fortunate that during my senior year, I got a preferred walk-on offer at Tulane, and so they were fine with it. They believed in me. They were comfortable with it. I had another preferred walk-on offer also, and there was some other schools that said, oh, you can show up and actually walk on, which I wasn't going to do because I didn't want to show up at school and actually have to try out. I was only going to go to a school that gave me a physical spot before actually getting there. And I was fortunate enough that Tulane gave me that. And they believed in me, they trusted me, and I'm so thankful for the opportunities that they gave me.
Was it ever like a liability concern that most other universities had when it came to like obviously your vision? Again, football, it's a sport in which, people are just flying around out there. I know as a long snapper, there's certain protections for the position, but still nonetheless, you never know like what can happen out there.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what can happen, but that's why you prepare. That's why you lift weights. You have to become really big, really strong, really good at what you do. I mean, obviously there is a risk, but I'm the one taking that risk. I had the most on the line, my vision. No one else did. And so it was my choice, my risk, my liability, I think. And if I was okay with it, then others were okay with it.
What kind of accommodations did you have to make for yourself in order to be able to be out there on a football field? I do know, like, of course, you have the partial vision and eye, but was there anything else, any tricks to getting out there?
I would always run out there, and if I had an issue, then one of my teammates would direct me where to go, or I would try and run out with the holder so he could show me where to go. And then we had verbal cues instead of hand signal cues. A lot of teams do hand signals to let the snapper know when to punt or when to snap, and I couldn't do that. So we had to do different verbal cues and mix it up so the other team wouldn't know, and then I would snap based on that. So that was definitely a big difference. But besides that, those are really the main differences, I'd say.
Now, you're doing a lot of motivational speaking these days. Any cool stories from the road of talking to people after the shows or anything?
No, it's always interesting to speak and then have people come up to you or send you a message after and really say how much it helps them or impacts them or what they got out of it. I always appreciate that and love hearing that because, at the end of the day, that's why I do it. That's why anyone who I think is a speaker or a coach does what they do, because they want to help other people. And when you're able to do that and you're able to hear about the success that others have had because you've impacted them, it's really incredible.
Obviously, we live in a different world right now going on with the current pandemic situation. I imagine you've probably had to increase your online presence these days to do a lot more of these public speaking type events.
Yeah, so I've done a ton of Zoom events at different, companies, teams, organizations, things like that. During the summer, I think in July, I started my own podcast really just to get my message out more, to meet new people, whatever it may be. It's called Blind Ambition. It's on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, it's on all the platforms. And then it's really just about reaching out to others and trying to get on other people's podcasts like we're doing today. That's a big part of it. There's not really live speaking events right now. And so it's, some companies and teams do Zoom ones, a lot don't. It really just depends. And from there, it's just getting my name out there more. So doing as many podcasts as I can.
Tell me, with Blind Ambition, what kind of conversations have you had to this point? Any kind of one stand out in your mind?
It's really been a really interesting tool, honestly. It's been great to network with others, to share other people's stories of them overcoming obstacles, share my story of overcoming obstacles. I don't think that I have a favorite one so far. A couple that really stand out to me, though. I think one person, Brian Bogert, who was on my podcast, he overcame the obstacle as a little kid. He got hit by a car or a truck, and his arm came flying off and almost died, and had to recover from that. And that was a really interesting conversation. I'm glad I got to share that with my listeners. But it's really been fun to meet new people, to network, to share other stories, share my stories. It's been a blast, honestly.
What stories do you use for inspiration? Public speaking, I know sometimes it's not just about your story, even though your story is incredible. Sometimes you have to draw from others.
Yeah, so I think my answer may or may not be different than other people's, but I'm very proud and love hearing all those stories of others. I'm very proud of him, Jake, so many other people, but that's not where I get my inspiration. And I think that I get my inspiration from within me. And I think that if you can't draw inspiration from within yourself, it's a lot harder to succeed at your goal. And I say this all the time. When I do a speech, when you hear a story, that will spark something. But if you don't then have the inspiration within yourself to take action on it, you'll be back to square one 2-3 days later. Whereas if my speech or Jake's story or someone else's story sparks you, and then you have that drive, that inspiration within yourself, that fire, then you can accomplish your goals. And the people who have that fire, that inspiration within themselves to really want to achieve something greater than themselves are the ones who see the most success.
What's one message that you would give to any kid that just, trying to find that level of confidence just in general?
Anything is possible if you outwork everyone else. And I think that people don't understand what outworking people mean. Most people think that being the hardest working person in the room means you go and you work really hard and outwork everyone at practice, or you go to your job and you outwork everyone at your job. And that's not what being the hardest working person in the room means, in my opinion. I think if you're a middle school or high school football player and you want to play in college and you work really hard at practice and that's it, you might not make it there. Talent can really only take you so far. You need to wake up early and practice in the mornings. You need to lift weights in the afternoon. You need to do what other people are not doing if you want to be successful. I think that's where I see so many people fall short is they're the hardest working person at their practice, but then someone else is also, practicing in the morning, lifting weights in the evening. And that's what I did. And that's why I was successful. And sooner or later, the people who do that will pass you by. So if you do that, then you can be successful. I promise you.
Again, so thankful for you being on the show. I will be sure to just share this every possible place I can, because I love this conversation. I love having you on. Plug everything. Tell me everything that you want people to go out there and know from you or listen to you from.
Yeah. So my podcast, like I said, Blind Ambition, it's on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all the major platforms. My Instagram at Aaron J. Golub, and then my website, aarongolub.com. And just shoot me a message, like my content, listen to my content. I will always respond to messages. So send something over. Happy to help, happy to talk, happy to see what I can do to impact you or someone else's life.
And last question for all our guests. What is your favorite all-time sports movie?
Wow. I have to think about this for a second. There's so many good ones out there. I mean, maybe like Talladega Nights, I guess.
Oh, okay. That's a new one. But yes, no, it definitely counts. I would say it's a top 10 comedy.
I haven't watched a sports movie in so long, I feel like. But I mean, that's definitely one of the best all time. I'll go with that.
Okay. Talladega Nights. You got your first shout out on the Slumpbuster podcast. Aaron Golub, be sure to check him out. Listeners, tons of great content each and every day.
This is a message brought to you by the Foundation for a Perfect Package.
Why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Because the only frill I want is the one up top.
Because being in a relationship is not an excuse to be lazy.
Because I like talking ball, not smelling like them.
Because deforestation is proven to prevent forest fires.
Manscaped is the only brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming.
Manscaped's Crop Preserver guarantees that you smell your best all day long.
Manscaped Boxer Briefs are the most comfortable underwear on the market.
Manscaped's advanced skincare technology makes nicks a thing of the past.
Manscaped is the #1 in men's grooming. Subscribers get 2 free blade refills every 3 months. Get 20% off plus free shipping and handling with the promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. That's the promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. Get your Lawnmower 3.0 today.
We are the Slumpbusters.
And we approve this message.
I'm LeBron James. No, I'm not. But I'm the king when it comes to sports betting. BetRaiser. RaiserSport.com.
It is time for me to formally introduce the newest member of the Slumpbuster Media Family. And I mean family, folks. We are Ohana here. Ohana means family. And family means nobody ever gets left behind or forgotten. That's a Lilo and Stitch reference. If you don't know that, go watch it right now. Anyway, neither here nor there. Andrew Hagenbaugh, welcome into the Slumpbuster. Welcome into the Slumpbuster Media team.
Dude, I appreciate you bringing me on. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait to join the team. And I love what you guys do. I love the memes that you guys post on Instagram and Twitter. I love everything you guys do. Ever since we all became friends, like day one, like I started like watching all you guys' stuff, and you guys do such amazing work, and I can't wait to be a part of it.
I've loved this journey of just starting a podcast, like just putting myself out there, each one of us putting ourselves out there. And it's one of the toughest things to do, but it's actually at the same time, not that tough. Like anyone could really put themselves out there, put them in a position to get some exposure, do something you love. And it just takes that little bit of a push. And one of the coolest things about it is I now know people from all parts of this country. Obviously, you're in Cleveland, Ohio, or you're at least from the Ohio area, right? So, you know, like out here in Austin, Texas, what are the odds I'm going to meet someone from Ohio just randomly? Not that big. Unless I start a, podcast that just happens to be the number 25th ranked football podcast in Canada. Shout out.
Really?
Out there. Yeah. Update from iTunes about a month ago. I was like, hey, cool. I mean,
hey,
Hosier's up there. I just picture everyone driving around on a Zamboni, just blaring the Slumpbuster podcast, just like as that intro song goes bumping, boom, boom.
Yeah. Or a moose with some AirPods or something. Just bumping that intro.
Just a few guys from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and now obviously too now Ohio, Texas. So there's many different bases to the Slumpbuster podcast now, folks. We have many different offices, find us all across the country. But Andrew, so obviously I brought you on because you were the host of the Fantasy Geniuses podcast.
Yeah.
And with the Fantasy Geniuses, obviously you've been a great source of fantasy football inspiration. So I just kind of wanted to get your fantasy football story. Like, my dad introduced it to me at like age 7, and I just kind of like picked it up and rolled from there. When did you first start getting into fantasy? When did you realize I'm actually pretty good at this?
I want to say the start of it was 12 years ago, around 2008, 2009. I was just around like 8th grade year. So getting ready to like enter into high school and stuff like that. And a lot of my friends were like, dude, you have to join a fantasy football league. I'm like, what's fantasy football? And they're like, it's just a league where you pick a bunch of people and you just watch the football games and you just see how they do after the week and you play like your friends and stuff like that. I'm like, sounds interesting. I'll join it. And ever since I started doing it, then as the last like few years, as soon as I started college, I started to get more like into it, like doing it for like money, and started like actually like taking it like extremely seriously. Like, yeah, beforehand it was all for fun and just, oh, I beat you and this and that is all for jokes and stuff. Now I almost do it competitively. And I didn't even think I was getting good until I literally just started like, because I've always wanted to be a sports radio host ever since I was like around 7. And as soon as I remember doing or wanting to be that, I started watching every single game. And even if I couldn't watch a game, I watched every single, like just before you even called me, I was watching the Buffalo Bills and the Seattle Seahawks highlights from the other day. So I'm here watching highlights nonstop all day, every day. And I take it seriously with all the stats and stuff. And that's how I became really decent at it.
All day, every day. I mean, that's exactly what the listeners should know, because if you're paying attention to the football, that means you're going to be able to help them bust a slump and win a fantasy football league. And I think that's very important. Obviously, we've been talking about like some players that were fading, some players that were rising. It feels really good whenever you do suggest someone in the rankings really high and they actually pay off. Equally, obviously, it feels really bad whenever you suggest someone high and they kind of, drop the ball and you get 1,000 DMs. They're like, hey, so you told me to start Wayne Gallman over, it's like,
yeah, and then it comes back to bite you.
that counterbalance of like playing it with the rankings, everything like that, because there's some obvious ones, like obviously you're going to put Christian McCaffrey 1 every time, but it's more than likely 90% of the time Christian McCaffrey's not going to finish as the number 1 running back. So what's your philosophy for the rankings? Mine is basically, let's say I had all these guys on my team, who would I start over each other? That's kind of how I go about my rankings whenever I do it.
Yeah, normally I do that. And as well as doing that, I kind of look at the matchups, because I think matchups are very important. Like, who are they playing? So, like, even if it's like a low-key guy, like I told this guy a couple weeks ago, hey, start Travis Fulgham. He's like, why? And I'm like, dude's going to pop off. Trust me. Next thing you know, that game, I can't remember who they were playing, dropped like 22 points. I was like, dude, I'm telling you, and I think, like I said, the matchups are very key, because if the Steelers versus the Bengals, any Steelers player you have, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, Ben Roethlisberger, you want to start them. Why? Easy defense. Easy matchup for that offense. So I kind of base a lot of it on who are they playing? What's the matchups look like? And like you said, there's even some obvious ones like Christian McCaffrey. It's an automatic start. Josh Allen, automatic start. It doesn't matter who they're playing. You start these guys.
I mean, we had this discussion here. Josh Allen, I mean, he popped off versus the Seahawks, but the Seahawks are kind of, bad.
Trash, yeah.
But then again, he also had a bad game against a really bad Jets defense. So Josh Allen is starting to turn into a bit of an enigma. I don't know if he's consistently that top 3 guy, to be honest.
I was going to say consistent, yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to play that matchup a little bit more with him. And I think that's kind of like something with quarterback. So quarterback, obviously, when I first started in fantasy football, doing it, like I said, with my dad, it was just like, okay, you got to get like a high-end, top-notch quarterback. And then that philosophy shifted over the years to, you can wait on quarterback. You could draft Matt Ryan in round 10 or 12.
Yeah.
You could kind of like push that can down the road. What has been the biggest shift in your draft philosophy, you think, since you started in middle school?
So I've always told people, always draft running backs first. Always. There is not a whole lot of depth in running backs. Once like the first 4 to 6 rounds, all the good running backs are gone, and you start getting to like you get the 2 that kind of split and they get some kind of touches, and then you start getting to the bench ones that they may get like 2 touches in the game to 0 touches in the game. So my philosophy is draft running backs first. And a couple of my leagues this year, I spent my first 3, almost all 4 rounds just drafting nothing but running backs. Like I've taken like Austin Eckler, and then the second round Nick Chubb, and then the third round I took this guy. And it's like, I built a good running back core. And guess what? I could wait on wide receivers. I could wait on tight ends. I could wait on quarterbacks because there's still going to be good ones out there. Even if you have an average quarterback, like I have Big Ben on my roster, doesn't need to put up 30 points. He puts up 20, perfectly fine. I got Tyreek Hill who could throw up 30 by himself as a wide receiver. I got Nick Chubb who could throw up 25 as a running back. So you kind of start going around to more positions. You start saying, who is consistent? Who is good enough to at least be consistent enough to where like, okay, this guy averages like 15 points a game, just around there. I want him on my roster compared to a guy who's going to be like a Josh Allen, who's going to be like 55 points this game and then 5 points the next game and then 50 the next, 5, goes back and forth. I don't trust those people. I trust people with consistency, but my philosophy is draft the running backs first. At least spend your first 2 to 3 rounds on the running back, because if you wait, you're not going to get a good running back core or a good running backs period.
Yeah, honestly, I think if there a lot of strategies have developed over the years, would that be high round tight end, no RBs, no wide receiver. I think out of all the strategies I hate, 0 RB is definitely one of those draft philosophies I just can never get behind. I understand the principle that running backs do get hurt, especially those high-end ones. We drafted Saquon Barkley, for example, in the podcaster league. I don't hold it against Saquon Barkley. In fact, I'm happier that I drafted early at running back. Granted, our running back still ended up being trash because we invested in Kenyon Drake, and Kenyon Drake is just that asshole. Just now is behind fucking Chase Edmonds on the depth chart. But neither here nor there. My point being, you can find good wide receiver value on waivers throughout the year. That's what I've noticed year in and year out. 0 RB, you just don't find good running backs too often. Like you can, and those are the times when you have to invest a premium on fab. And by the way, another thing I want to point out to anyone doing fantasy football right now, if you're a commissioner, stop playing around. Use fab.
Yeah.
Don't be a chump. Come on.
Yeah.
Use the Slumpbuster Podcast. Don't be a chump.
Yeah.
Use a fab. But honestly, yes, no, fab, because I'm in a league right now with traditional waivers, and it is the most tedious, annoying process that the lower end teams continuously get priority on the best players. And obviously these teams they may get that player, but they have no opportunity at the playoffs, or their opportunity is constantly dwindling. Whereas I'm in the heat of a playoff race and I could use that guy. And if I'm willing to spend more money or more fab in this instance to get that guy. That's why I think fab needs to be imposed in all leagues whenever possible.
Oh, no, I 100% agree. I'm in a couple of those leagues as well, and it's just so annoying. And I can't stand it because it's like, oh, I'm 6-3, and it's like I'm going for a playoffs, and it's like, oh, I can use this guy. And then next thing you know, the guy who's 1-7 gets him, and it's like, and he doesn't even play him. I'm like, you got this guy, you don't even play him, and then you make a trade for him. And they don't want to give him, but he's like, I don't want to give him up. He's too good. It's like, dude, you're not even using him, and you're still losing. So what's your purpose of having him? You're just holding him to piss people off. Like, I mean, it's a good strategy, but because you're really doing it. But why? What's the purpose of getting the guy you're not going to use, or if you're not going to make a playoff for?
Yeah, let's talk how you prioritize fab, because obviously I was editing our most recent episode of the Slumpbuster Fantasy Football Podcast, episode 30. Go ahead and check that out, listeners. But you mentioned on there you like to hold on to your fab. I am completely on the opposite side of things. I think that when players are out there, you need to invest in them, because you can't take that money into the offseason. I mean, I guess some leagues can. You can roll it over into the next year. But for the most part, most leagues don't. And in that instance, I think no one should end the year with $100 in fab. If you're ending the year with $100 in fab, newsflash, you're more than likely not in the playoff race. You have to get some of these free agents. That's the only way to win leagues. The draft is only about like 20% of the equation. The other 80% is your in-season management. And I think that's why I believe fab early in the year, throughout the middle part of the year, is so important. Now, I do think that you have to leave yourself at least some money, because I have seen it go the opposite way, where the player that I was once playing in a championship round, he had more fab than me. He was able to pick up Jamal Williams when Aaron Jones was ruled out, and he ended up beating me in the championship round. Now, that one burned me, but at the same time, I wouldn't have been in the championship round if I didn't use my fab throughout the year. So where do you strike that balance?
For me, it's kind of funny because in another league I'm in with Austin, my co-host of the Fantasy Geniuses, we're in a league with a bunch of our friends. Well, the first and second place team have $50 left in their fab. I still have $100, and I'm in third place at 6-3. And I've gotten Justin Herbert. The other day I got DJ Dallas before the Seattle game. I've gotten Antonio Brown. I've gotten let's see, Mike Davis, John Brown, Travis Fulgham. So I've gotten a lot of these guys without having to use my fab. A lot of it, I think it's just based on luck, in my opinion.
Yeah, because I don't think you could do that like in our podcaster league, for example, because everyone's so in tune with the players out there on the market. Like if you're in an amateur league, if you're in a league with like your family, friends from high school, I could see you getting away with a lot of those moves because people are just like, you know, they're casual. If we win, we win. You know, maybe they could pick us up someone. For example, like some of my high school friends in one of my podcast leagues, they never use their fab. And I'll be honest, as a commissioner, as someone who does the podcast, as someone who posts and occasionally does the fantasy football rankings on a fantasy football podcast, I'm like, you're killing me. And I want to boot you from this league so bad, but I also want to maintain friendship here. So that's kind of like one of those things. I'll be honest. I have booted people from leagues and had to maintain that friendship. And it's a little awkward, but at the same time, it's just like you try and shadow ban them, kind of like Twitter does whenever you say the wrong thing, you know?
But I agree. And the thing is, I try to use my fab, but then it's like, okay, I put $60 on this guy. It's like, okay, no one else won for him. So I was like, I didn't have to spend money on him. But I think spending money, not a whole lot of money, because normally when I use a fab, the most I'll go is like $10. Because the thing is, if you go more, you could be the only person who's getting that guy. And next thing you know, you spend like $30 of your fab, just like, well, nobody went for him. Instead of like, okay, I'll risk $5. And if $5 or $10 doesn't work, then I know that a bunch of people wanted them. I try to go for the people that nobody really wants.
Well, the tricky thing is, obviously, with fab, it's a silent auction, or at least in most leagues, it's a silent auction. So you never really know, because in one league, particularly this year, very applicable like example, Christian McCaffrey goes down. The Christian McCaffrey owner spent about $50 on fab. Well, it's a good thing he did, because the next highest bid was $49. You have to sometimes just kind of like take a chance, because you don't know what your league mates are doing. Obviously, it sucks for us because we have to put out our opinions on there very publicly. And I have seen that used against us from time to time. But, oh well. Anyway, talked enough fantasy right now. If you want to listen more fantasy takes from Andrew, go ahead and check him out on all his pages. Go ahead and check him out on moving forward on the Slumpbuster Fantasy Football Pod. But we are here to just talk about the general NFL here. Week 10 starting up, and naturally, it's Thursday Night Football, so it only makes sense that we have an AFC South matchup taking place. And it's actually a good game. I'm not even going to front. It's a good game. We have the Colts at 5-3 going against the 6-2 Titans. The Titans at home are 2-point favorites, according to Vegas. Titans have shown a little bit of chinks in the armor, and the Colts, although they had played well coming out of the bye week with a couple wins here, I still do have my concerns long-term about like Phillip Rivers. Obviously, they coming off that loss to Baltimore. This is a huge one, though. Like, this really can change the division. Who gets that 4 seed in a very heated playoff race right now in the AFC? What do you think of this game? Who are you picking?
I'm going with Tennessee just for the fact that, and I'm sorry to Ayers, but your man Phillip Rivers, there's just some games, like when he played against my Browns, just absolute turnover machine. And also, too, you have kind of a weakened defense a little bit. And all Ryan Tannehill needed was just to go to Tennessee and start and get away from Adam Gase in Miami. And he's become a quarterback that he was supposed to be years ago and was just never meant to be. And you got Derrick Henry, who's just an absolute bulldozer of a running back. Brian Tannehill's using A.J. Brown, Jonnu Smith, Corey Davis. He's got all these great weapons around him. And especially in Tennessee, Tennessee's such a tough place to win at. And I think the Colts can hang on and battle, but I don't think it's going to be enough to take down the Titans.
I think I'm actually going to split with you on this one. I think the Colts, with their defense, what they do well, stopping the run, that's going to be enough to put it on the backs of Ryan Tannehill. And while Ryan Tannehill has played well throughout the season, I do just love that Colts number 1 ranked defense has been playing well. It's just going to be a matter of, like you mentioned, can Phillip Rivers maintain, keep the ball out of the opposing jersey? The Colts have a decent little track record against the Titans in recent history as well. Go ahead and give me the Colts against the Titans. And like I said, we're going to start off split on Thursday Night Football. Let's move into the Sunday slate. Starting with your team. They're playing at home against the Houston Texans and are currently only about 3-point favorites. With the Texans, their only 2 wins this season have come against Jacksonville. They just beat Jacksonville again. Obviously, they still don't have like a solidified head coach This is the week that I believe most Browns fans would feel we have to win this game. And especially coming off that huge loss to the Raiders, which has a lot of playoff implications recently. I think that you guys will, just simply because I think the Texans are in a huge state of malfunction. But with currently what's going on with Baker, that that it definitely is a little bit more. If Case Keenum plays, I might have to go with who has the better quarterback, and that's always going to be Deshaun Watson in this case. It might even be if Baker does play.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but the reason why I like the Cleveland Browns in this, and I'm not trying to be a homer in this one, but we are at home. We do get Nick Chubb, and I believe we're getting Wyatt Teller back as well, which helps solidify the offensive line again, because that brings back the toughness that we were missing from Nick Chubb and Wyatt Teller. Getting those two back makes things a little bit easier. The Texans defense is not what they used to be in recent years, thanks to Bill O'Brien, of course. And I think with Nick Chubb getting back, even if he has limited touches, that helps boost Kareem Hunt and gets him going again. And if Stefanski is smart, he knows that Baker likes to roll out, and he's good at rolling out and making throws on a rollout pass. If Stefanski's smart, they do a lot of rollouts with Baker, even just 10-yard passes, just to Jarvis Landry or to Austin Hooper or to, even if it's Harrison Bryant. Harrison Bryant's looked so good in these recent few games. This team's got so many weapons on the offensive front and on the offensive line. The only thing that's concerning me with Deshaun Watson is that he's got a good wide receiver core with Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, and the Browns secondary is one of the absolute worst, if not the worst, in the NFL. And that's the thing that scares me the most. It's just, can our defense hold on? Because it did not work against Las Vegas whatsoever. And that's my issue is the Browns could win this game. I know they can. It's a huge must-win game because that puts us right back into the playoffs. But I'm just very, very concerned about our defense and that we didn't go for anybody like Anthony Harris at the deadline.
Well, the bright spot, of course, you have that huge win against the Colts, so that helps you with tiebreaker situations. But losing to the Raiders, who's also in the thick of things. Do you guys still have the Dolphins on your schedule by chance?
I can actually double check on that.
Because that's where kind of like the playoff race is starting to turn. The Dolphins, Browns, Raiders, Colts, as far as those wild card spots.
We do not.
Okay, well, that's good because I do know the Raiders play the Dolphins. And I know that's going to be one of those things that kind of like shifts the playoff race a little. As far as closing analysis, yeah, I think it's just going to come down to hopefully Baker plays for you guys. Mm-hmm. I think if Nick Chubb is back, keep the ball on the ground, keep the game plan simple, and that's how you're going to win this game. Moving into the next game. Right now, Vegas doesn't have a line for this, or at least it's not posted on ESPN. But it is the Washington football team at 2-6 going against the Detroit Lions. This is going to actually be a game that I'm going to kind of be interested in the morning slate, mostly because it is Alex Smith's first official start because he's played some relief duty in the last couple weeks, or in the last few weeks. Obviously coming off Kyle Allen having an unfortunate injury. Prayers up to Kyle Allen there. Tough thing to be a Washington football team quarterback, and particularly for your lower body. But Alex Smith is back. I do think with a full week to prepare as the starter, he'll be more energized going into this game than he was in playing in relief duty. I think it's a completely different feel whenever you step into those situations, not knowing if you're the guy. There are some guys that you were talking about in the fantasy football podcast to like key up, like J.D. McKissick, might boost Terry McLaurin a little bit. As far as the Lions, I feel like every time I pick them, they end up losing. So I'm going to go against them, and they're probably going to end up winning. I'm going to go with the Washington football team, pull off a huge road victory.
I have to agree. I actually got Washington in this game as well. Just like you said, Alex Smith's got a whole week to be the starter, and we all know what Alex Smith can do when he's healthy. He is a very, very good quarterback. Even in relief duty this past weekend, he still threw for 300 yards. When Kyle Allen went down, he came in, balled out, loved it. Loved watching every minute of that game. And I personally think Washington, even though they're a bad football team, no pun intended, I think their defense is really, really good and is very underrated. And I think that's the key to this game is Washington's defense just goes after Stafford nonstop and just takes down that Lions offense. So for me, I like Washington, but I like it for more of like defensive purposes.
I can see that. I can see that being a huge thing. And I don't generally give Alex Smith too much of a boost for the offense. I just know he'll play it safe. He'll keep the game plan short and simple, intermediate passes, keep it on the ground, let that defense do the work with Chase Young and those guys giving the Lions, who have a pretty bad offensive line, a field day. Yeah, that's why I'm kind of like leaning them in this matchup. Moving to the next one, I think this is going to be a quick hitter analysis, probably the biggest line of the week. It's going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars going into Lambeau. Jags are currently 13.5-point underdogs, which might be tempting to take the Vegas line if you could take the Jags and the points there. But overall, for just the game, this should be an easy one for the Packers. I could just see Aaron Rodgers being able to carve up this weak Jacksonville defense. I think Gardner Minshew is going to be out again this week. And if that is the case, then again, you're going to deal with the undrafted rookie. And he played well last week, but against a bad Houston Texans defense. So I can't really read too much into that. Pack by a lot. Go Pack, go.
Yeah. Again, go Pack, go. I love the Packers in this one. I think the Packers can go above the spread, honestly, because the way that Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams have been connecting as of late, it has just been unbelievable. And then Aaron Jones is healthy again. You get him back, and he's just the Aaron Jones that we all love to see and watch him run. So it's a no-brainer who's going to win this game, especially in Lambeau Field. It's almost impossible to win at Lambeau, so I have to go with the Packers.
Okay, next one on the slate, of course. Anyone can still win the NFC East. So the Giants at 2-7 are the home underdogs at 3.5 points to the Philadelphia Eagles. These teams just played a couple weeks ago. Obviously, we got a memorable highlight from it with Daniel Jones exceeding speed of Lamar Jackson, but then putting himself out there with one of the worst quarterback highlights in NFL history, getting tackled by the 20-yard line. I feel for Daniel Jones, but on the bright side, you can at least say there's something there. I have seen glimpses. Every time I see those glimpses, though, it's overshadowed by a key turnover or fumble. And I think that's been one of the Giants' biggest problems. I think I'm actually going to go with them, though, to defend home and beat the Eagles, though. I like kind of what their defense has been able to do. Carson Wentz has had his trouble with turnovers as well. And I think this is a key spot for a upset.
Honestly, I would love to see an upset, but I do have to go with the Philadelphia Eagles on this one. I think Carson Wentz in these last few games has looked a lot better and a lot more efficient. He had a very close game against the Ravens. He had a big game against the Giants. And obviously this past week, he destroyed the Cowboys. And so he's looking a lot more like the Carson Wentz that we used to watch a couple of years ago, where we were talking about him being like an MVP and him being in the MVP race those couple of years. He was before the ACL tears and all those injuries and stuff like that and all that mess. But I like Carson Wentz in this one. I think him and the Eagles are starting to look more of like a football team like they were used to. So I have to say the Eagles.
Agree to disagree on that one. I believe that there is still hope for New York Giants football. Actually, I think that the Giants fans base would actually be pissed if they made the playoffs, because you're going from a top 3 pick all the way into like the bottom half of the draft if you make the playoffs, which I think is the last thing the Giants need, honestly, at this point. I think they actually do need that high round draft pick, regardless of what it is. New quarterback, new offensive line, they need something there, and it has to be in the top 10.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Okay, next up, the Bucs coming off a Sunday night beatdown to division rival New Orleans Saints. Now, I said last week I thought the Bucs could at least split with New Orleans. I didn't expect them to have that kind of showing, especially because they have a shiny new weapon in Antonio Brown. Things are looking good. You have that triplet of wide receivers out there. You have Brady, you have Fournette, you have Jones. You have 3 points on the scoreboard when it's all said and done. I think that is concerning, but I don't think that is going to affect them moving forward necessarily. In fact, if anything, Brady has taught us that he has a huge revenge gene in his body. And I think at the expense of the Carolina Panthers, that's where we're going to see they are 5-point favorites on the road. And I will say in the Panthers' favor, they have been one of the, and I think this is shown in the Vegas line, they've been a team that has consistently been able to beat the spread. Even if they don't necessarily win a lot of games this year at 3-6, they can at least cover the points. But I like the Bucs by a lot, just given what we saw last week.
Yeah, I like the Bucs by a lot as well. Like you said, the Panthers have been looking really good lately, and they've been able to cover the spread. And we saw that against the Chiefs, that they looked really, really good. But when Tom Brady loses, it's like Aaron Rodgers. It's a revenge game, and you don't like them when they're pissed off and they get their asses beaten. They don't like that. Like you said, they got a shiny new toy in Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, two of the best receivers in football, Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette, great running back duo. You have a good offensive line. this spells disaster for Carolina.
And normally their defense would be
Tampa
good.
Bay.
And normally you would say their defense is good. I don't know what happened against New Orleans, but Shaq Barrett, Levante David, all of them didn't show out to play. And that was kind of one of the biggest things that surprised me in that game, especially because great front sevens have given Drew Brees a lot of trouble. So I don't know what happened in the game planning that they just couldn't keep up with them. Let's chalk it up as just an outlier game and move forward there. This next one actually has surprising playoff implications. The Broncos, ever since getting Drew Lock back, they've been on a little bit of a little streak here, just a couple games, but still they beat the Los Angeles Chargers in one of those heartbreaking games for Harris there. And, you know, they went against the Falcons and they almost did another comeback there. I picked up Drew Lock in a streaming option, Fantasy League, and I got to say, well, good. I mean, you know, he even gave Jerry Jeudy a little bit of upside. We don't know if Drew Lock is the long-term future in Denver, but at least for the most part, he has a little bit of confidence, a swag behind him, and I think that helps the Broncos whenever he's out on the field. They played the Raiders. Now, the Raiders, whenever they do this, whenever they have a huge couple wins, they always seem to follow it up by a unfortunate setback game, and I do kind of get the sense that could be it. I'm going to actually take the Broncos as a road underdog to beat the Raiders. 5-point dogs going into Las Vegas.
I'm going with the Broncos as well, just for the fact that Drew Lock and the Broncos are running on such like a winning high. And like you said, they came back against the Chargers. They almost came back against the Falcons. Drew Lock is looking really good. I have a reason to start Jerry Jeudy now in my fantasy leagues. Those two have been clicking really well. I like where this offense is going. You have Melvin Gordon. You have Phillip Lindsay. Even Phillip Lindsay is still a great running back as a backup. So I like what this offense is doing. Vic Fangio is starting to get it together a little bit. I like the upset here. I do like the Broncos over the Raiders. Like you said, the Raiders always have that little streak where they go on a couple of good wins and then all of a sudden they turn into Tampa Bay against the Saints and they just lose 38-0 or whatever, 38-3, and it's just an absolute mess. So yeah, I have the Broncos in this one as well.
Now, I think the Raiders are a playoff team, but they always just have that kind of gene in them. They're a little inconsistent at this point. If you like narratives, though, this next game is the game for you. A matchup of two rookies heading in opposite directions. We have Justin Herbert, who's probably the more impressive of the two, but his team has not delivered on the results. The Chargers are 2-6 heading into Miami, and Miami is a 2.5-point favorite at home, mostly because of the way that defense is played, the number one scoring defense in the NFL. And Tua has played in the last couple games. He showed some glimpses against Arizona. He wasn't that impressive in his debut against the Rams. I'm kind of wondering if third game gets more settled, more adjusted. Obviously, he missed half of last season too with that hip injury. I think he just needed some time, and I kind of am expecting a big breakout game for Tua against this Chargers team. I'm still firing up Justin Herbert in my leagues, but, I'm looking forward to this one. This is going to be one of those ones where we talk about it, number 5 versus number 6 in the draft selection. I'm taking the Dolphins at home. Where are you on?
I'm actually going to go with the Chargers on this one. I think Justin Herbert's going to continue to just absolutely dominate and ball out. Him and Keenan Allen have been amazing.
It is an afternoon game, too, you would say, so they don't get hit as hard with the west to east coast swing.
Yeah, and I think that helps a lot, but I'm not too caught up in Tua just yet. I'm hoping this is a game where, because I want him to be good. I want him to be really good. But I don't think this is the game where he's going to do it in, and I think it's going to take it, because a lot of the scoring that's been done the last couple of games that Tua's been in have been nothing but almost like defense and special teams type of scoring. So I don't know if you can rely on that this game or the next game or this and that. I think if the Dolphins win this game, it has to be Tua being Tua. It can't be no more defense doing all the work and no more special teams, running the football back on kickoff every single play. So,
I mean, you would say for Tua, technically he did take a downgrade going from Alabama to the Dolphins wide receiving core, because if you look at all the wide receivers he had in Alabama, Jerry Jeudy, Ruggs III, Smith, the tight end, the running back, Najee Harris, they were technically a better offensive unit, because all those guys are going to be pros and first rounders, than what the Dolphins currently have, because Devontae Parker is good. But other than that, you're depending on Myles Gaskins, Patrick Laird, all these guys who are, they're okay. They're pros at least. But the guys on last year's Crimson Tide team, are blue chip first rounders. I just think this could be a breakout game. If there's ever a team that allows a rookie quarterback to have a breakout game, I think it'd be the Chargers. Sorry, Aris.
I hope I'm wrong. Sorry, Aris.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, hey, Drew's on your side there. He went with your team. I'm going against him. Next up, we do have the Bills going into Arizona. Again, a game that doesn't have the line posted, so I wonder what's going on there. I do think it is going to be a close game, so maybe Vegas is kind of still deciding on who's going to be the favorite, who's going to be the underdog on this one. But the Bills at 7-2 going against the 5-3 Cardinals. The Cardinals, obviously they lost against Miami this past week. The Bills managed to finally get back in the win column finally get things going again. They obviously got a big win against their division rival Patriots. They beat the Seahawks. Hopefully they found some level of consistency in the last couple games and they could carry it into Arizona. The Cardinals, I still have a tough time fully believing in this team, fully trusting this team. And that is why I'm going to take the Bills on the road.
Yeah, I'm going with the Bills on the road as well. I feel like the Bills are more of a complete team, a more well-balanced offense and a very well-balanced defense. I think the Cardinals are just more scattered. It's more or less Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, and then Budda Baker, Isaiah Simmons, and a couple other people on the defense. It's Patrick Peterson. And I think they're still kind of building. They're showing what they can do, but I think they're still kind of like that building process. And I feel like the Bills are just going to come out and they're going to put up a big amount of points like they did against Seattle, just for the fact that I think Josh Allen can have another good game. You get John Brown back. Devin Singletary looked okay. I just think that the Bills all around are just more of a complete team than the Arizona Cardinals. And I think that's what wins games.
Yeah, I think the Cardinals are still a little bit gimmicky at this time in terms of how they move the ball, how their offense works. Their defense, obviously they lost pieces like Chandler Jones throughout the year. So I think they've taken a step back in that regard. So I think the Bills are in a better position to win this game. The next game up is the Seahawks, who are the counter opposite to that Bills matchup coming off that loss. Russell Wilson, he showed some signs of fatigue carrying this team because we know this team has been carried firmly on the back of Russell Wilson this entire season. But they are going into Los Angeles to play the Rams. Now, the Rams have been a questionable team. Obviously, all of their wins have been against the NFC East and the Bears.
Yeah,
that's been one of the big things. Are they good? Are they bad? Where are they? They've lost some tough games against the Niners. They got blown out last time we saw them against the Dolphins. Now they play the Seahawks, I believe, coming off a bye week, if I'm not mistaken. I like the Rams in this one. And when you consider Sean McVay, I still think Sean McVay is a very good head coach. I think having 2 weeks to game plan, get ready for this game, be comfortable and sit in Los Angeles as well. They don't have to travel on the road. I think that they will be ready. And say what you want about Jared Goff, say what you want about the Rams offense, but it is a good offense. And we know what we know about the Seahawks. They cannot defend. So it's going to be another game in which Russell Wilson is going to have to just absolutely air the ball out. The Rams are a 1.5 favorite in this game. I'm going to go with them at home.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm going with the Rams at home as well. I don't think the Seahawks can just continue to air it out on a bunch of defenses and a bunch of teams. I think they're eventually going to have to start relying on Chris Carson in the run. They're going to have to start relying on their tight ends. And, you can't always just continue to lob it up to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett every single play. It's just team. That's why they lost to the Bills, is because they started to blitz him a lot more to where he has no time to make those kinds of throws. And I think it's going to be the same with the Rams, because I think the Rams defense is a lot better than the Bills defense, because you have good pass rushers like Aaron Donald, who can absolutely just beat anybody. You have good safeties in Jalen Ramsey. You have these good players, and I'm a huge defensive guy, and I still believe Ray Lewis to this day, because I remember his Madden 05 intro video where it's just him blowing up a Browns player and saying defense wins championships. And so I'm going to continue to roll with that. I think defense wins this game for the Rams.
I think that's where we talk about, are the Seahawks still a Super Bowl team? I think most people agree that they're not, just simply because you cannot continue to win, especially in the playoffs, with this bad of a defense, and especially if they don't manage to get home field advantage too and have to play more rounds, with that number one seed being in such a key position this year with the only one team getting the bye. I've already given up hope on my team, to be honest. When you have $80 million in cap space on the IR, there's not a lot of hope for us. At 4-5, it's disappointing too. They are 9.5-point underdogs on the road heading into New Orleans. New Orleans obviously coming off that big win. And as much as I love Shanahan, it's just hard with Nick Mullins. I think that Nick Mullins is a very capable backup, but now that we're in a position in which he has to be the starter, this team it can't operate. It's a horrible offense at the moment. They might get some relief with Raheem Mostert being back, maybe a Deebo Samuel reemergence, but even then, when you just can't ignore the hole at the quarterback position. The last time the Niners had to play the Saints, they had to get in a shootout with Jimmy G. And with Jimmy G out with the ankle injury, I just don't think that that's even a possibility. So I'm going to take the Saints, as much as I hate to say it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but this is a quick one for me. I have to say the Saints as well. They're at home. Like you said, $80 million in cap, just chilling on the IR. And I put all of that onto COVID because due to the lack of the offseason, due to lack of preseason.
Not really, man. I just gotta say, because when it comes to the Niners, there's been a track record of them having extensive injury list. Now, this year is by far and away the worst they've had.
Yeah.
But over the last couple of years, short of the Super Bowl year, and even in the Super year, there was injuries. There was a lot of injuries too.
True.
But the previous other years of the Shanahan regime, there just seems to be an extensive amount. And I've talked about this on my other show too. Like, what is that? Is that a lack of the training staff? How is it that so many players? Are you just drafting guys who are quote unquote soft? And I think it's a mixture of both. And then you add in the lack of a training camp. And I think it just gives more liability to get hurt. And I think that there's something that needs to be reevaluated with how Shanahan in this. I know there's a luck factor too, but there has to be some way to strengthen guys' ACLs, or how at this point I'm ready to donate a high ankle. I don't even know how you do it, but God, every time I look down, I'm like, okay, who's going down with a high ankle this week? That's literally been the one defining trait of the Niners season. Change the hashtag from Revenge Tour 2020 to High Ankle Sprain 2020, because that's exactly what the Niners have been dealing with. Put that on the t-shirts.
Yeah, hey, that'd be a selling t-shirt, wouldn't it?
Hey, I'm already. I'll sell it. We'll sell it off to slumpbuster.com. Stay tuned for that shirt, guys. Merchandising. Let's do it.
Merchandising on the brain, on the time.
Heard it here first. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is going to be a good one for you. So obviously, an AFC North, you guys are still holding out hope you could win this division. I know it's not completely in the realm of possibility. I think you guys are more fighting for the wild card at this point. But the Bengals are going into Pittsburgh this week. The Bengals have been a team that, we talk about the Panthers being able to consistently cover the spread. The Bengals have literally done it every single game this season. Every single game the Bengals have played, they have covered the spread. And you just got to give it up to Joe Burrow. This guy is looking fantastic in spite of the shortcomings in this team. I wonder what's going to happen with the future at coach with Zach Taylor, if they're going to give him some time. Are they going to give this regime time to really build around him? But for now, here in the now, I do think that the Bengals have shown a very impressive track record. Now they're going against the undefeated Steelers. And I know that the Steelers, according to you, have been a little bit fraudulent. I am going to make a shocking pick. I'm going to pick the Bengals coming off a bye week to go into Pittsburgh and get a victory.
Hey,
hot take of the week.
Hey, I'm joining on that hot take because I actually have the Bengals winning as well. Like I said with Aris the other day, I just think the Steelers are that false 8-0 team. Because if you look at the teams that they played, they're not very good teams. You smoked the Denver Broncos. You smoked the Cleveland Browns. Yes, the Cleveland Browns have a winning record, but they have the same exact schedule basically as you do. And it's just as easy. But you're playing all these weak teams. You're beating every team in the NFC East. You're not beating high-quality opponents. And sure, that's giving you confidence and stuff like, oh, yeah, we're 8-0. Our defense is popping off. Our offense is really good now. And I think the Bengals, because I don't think people remember, the Bengals had a really good game against the Baltimore Ravens. They had a really good game against some big teams. And it's all due in the part with what you just said, Joe Burrow just coming out and just slinging the ball, just doing what he did back in LSU. Now, my issue is obviously, again, with the defense of the Bengals, can they keep up and stop that offense? Well, if the Dallas Cowboys can almost do it, then I'm more than sure that the Bengals can almost do it. And obviously the Bengals have a better quarterback than Dallas right now. So
you don't believe in Ben DiNucci? Or was it Cooper Rush this week? I didn't really watch.
It was Gary Gilbert.
Gary Gilbert. That is what the Dallas Cowboys have resorted to.
Yeah.
Thank God they're on bye week. Hopefully Andy Dalton gets healthy by the time they come back. But anyway, back into this game.
Yeah, I have to go with the Bengals as well. I think the Bengals can surprise everybody and actually win this football game.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think all the right pieces are there for an upset. Obviously, we don't see teams go 16-0. And the Steelers have been clinging on to that undefeated record for the last few weeks. I mean, they had the blowout victories, like you mentioned, against the Browns, and then a good victory against the Titans, even though the Titans made a little bit of a comeback there.
Yeah.
But I do think that eventually that the cracks are starting to show there. And I think that the Bengals are the right team to just kind of break things open and at least give them their first L. I don't know if it's going to be lasting. I don't know what that's going to mean for the Bengals. But I do think that the Bengals are a emerging, rising team. If they do fire Zach Taylor, Joe Brady's out there, and he's looking pretty good in Carolina. He was, the offensive coordinator out there in LSU. That might be something to pursue Cincinnati. I'm just saying. Okay.
Hey, foreshadowing, right?
Foreshadowing. I'm putting that narrative out there. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that Joe Burrow would be happy to see him walk through that door.
Next game, 100%.
Next game up, we have the Sunday night matchup. That is going to be the Baltimore Ravens going into New England. The last time these two teams played on a primetime game, it was the Baltimore Ravens running roughshod over the New England Patriots. They are currently a touchdown favorite. The Patriots are also playing on a short week. Obviously, they played on Monday Night Football against the Jets. The Jets gave them a little bit more of a game than we were expecting. And I don't think this is a good Patriots team, obviously. I think the narrative's out there. Everyone kind of knows what this team is. Cam is clinging for his NFL career at this point. Normally, if this was a better team, I would say Lamar Jackson versus Cam Newton in a primetime game, sign me up. But right now, I just have to go with the Ravens, and I think the Ravens are going to win by a lot because I don't think that Bill has the pieces to stop Lamar and the Ravens offense, even though I do think Lamar has regressed. I do think that he does well what New England can't stop.
Yeah, 100%. I have to go with the Ravens as well. The Patriots, just for the first time in what seems like decades, they actually don't look like a good football team. Cam Newton does not look like the Cam Newton that we used to know and watch. And they just don't have any weapons to help them on the offensive front. Everyone's injured your running backs are Rex Burkhead and James White. Yeah. And that's not enough. You can't win with those two running backs. You can't win with unknown wide receivers unless you're Tom Brady. But the thing is, Cam Newton's not Tom Brady.
It makes you realize why Tom had to leave, right? Because he looked at this roster and was like, I don't want to play with this. I don't want to be throwing to fucking Jake Berrios or Jamarius Byrd, all these guys that they just keep pulling out, N'Keal Harry who can't get open. And even when Cam does show like a splash highlight, like the throws are ugly. The throws aren't looking great. His best highlights this year have been as a runner. Obviously, their big touchdowns this week came as him like getting outside the pocket, just diving for the end zone. And that's when you look back at like the Seattle game, which has been one of Cam's like shining highlights on the year. Again, Cam as a runner or being able to take advantage of a bad Seahawks defense. Except on the 1 yard line. But so I think this is just not lining up for the Patriots. Albeit they screwed themselves in the tank because they gave the Jets the win and now they get to see Trevor Lawrence in division potentially. So good for them.
Hey, yeah, it's perfect for them.
Okay, Monday night, NFC North. The Minnesota Vikings at 3-5 versus the Chicago Bears at 5-4. The Bears have really started to show that mirage at the start of the season, that perfect beginning, is starting to fall apart on them. And at the same time, the counter to that is I'm looking at the Vikings, and I don't know what the Vikings are trying to do because they traded off all these pieces. They traded off Yannick Ngakoue they acquired, and then they go out there and then they start winning games. Now, at this point, I have to look at them. So they're 2.5-point favorites, 2 on the road. I went with the Bears the last couple of weeks because I thought that maybe they could do decent enough to get the wins. I mean, the defense is still there. God, I hate this matchup. I'm not sure where Drew, you go first.
I'm going with the Vikings because I've picked the Bears way too much, and they've always disappointed me when I pick them. So for once in my life, I think I'm going to make a smart decision here and just go with the opposite of the Bears. I'm going to go with the Vikings. Nick Foles, yeah, he played well these last 2 games or so, but I just don't trust him. When the season started and they were like undefeated, I'm like, the Bears and the Steelers are those false undefeated teams. Like, they're beating teams that don't matter. And it's starting to show with the Bears, now not so much with the Steelers, but with the Bears, it's starting to show a lot that, yes, they were that false undefeated team. And they went from being 5-0 now to 5-4, losing almost 4 straight. I think that trend continues because, yeah, the Vikings did give up Yannick Ngakoue, but their defense is still good enough of a defense to take down a team like Nick Foles and that weak offense of the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're just going to do enough to get this win. I'm going with the Vikings as well. I don't feel good about doing it with either of these teams. I feel there's a little bit of inconsistency on both sides. But I feel as though when you look at just the trends, I mean, Nick Foles, you talk about it, there's even the narrative out there that Mitch Trubisky might get his job back. And I knew that was a fear from the second that they decided they were going to put Nick Foles in there. If you're the Bears, you just have to start looking at your quarterback options seriously, especially in the draft. They need to draft a quarterback. There's no way around that. There's plenty of good options, whether that be Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, when you look at where they're going to be drafting this year. Mm-hmm. I think those are where they kind of have to start looking. But all right, guys, that is going to put a capper on this show here. Drew, again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a part of the team. We look forward to having you further on this show. Anything you want to give a shout out to for the listeners before we head out?
Yeah, first off, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be a part of this team. It truly means a lot, and it's so amazing to be a part of a great group of guys that love and are passionate about what they do, and we're all passionate about the game that we love the most, so it feels good to be a part of something special. And for those who do know who I am, obviously you guys know the Fantasy Geniuses podcast. We try and record once a week. We've missed the last couple of weeks due to some family stuff and some personal stuff. So we finally made an episode this past Friday. Be sure you guys go and check that out. And yeah, you guys can follow that on the Fantasy Geniuses on Instagram and the FF Geniuses on Twitter. So yeah,
we got to start to talk about though your name here. We all have a little bit of a code name. We have Dre with MMA Dre, Christian with C Money, Juju Talk Sports here, the Fantasy Aristotle. What are you, Drew? Are you Slumpbuster Drew, like Slumpbuster Bob? What we got to call you?
So this is actually kind of a funny story. So my college soccer coach can never pronounce my last name correctly. My last name is Hagenbaugh, which is a very, if you can't tell by the flag, very authentic German last name. And he could never pronounce it to save his life. And so he's like, you know what? I'm just going to name you after my favorite ice cream, and that's Hagenbaugh.
Okay. We'll throw it out there. So which flavor of Haagen-Dazs would you mark yourself?
Oh, man, dude, that's tough.
Yeah, what is the go-to here before we head out?
I would say vanilla bean.
Okay. Respect.
I'm more of a traditional kind of guy.
I think I lean, in terms of all the ice creams, though, I think I lean Ben & Jerry's. They have some great,
Oh, yeah. I love Ben & Jerry's.
Yeah, they got the mixes. They know what they're doing. I think it's time to head on out. So before you do, go ahead and check us out at Slumpbuster Podcast on IG, at Slumpbuster Pod on Twitter. You can follow Drew Hagenbaugh on Twitter, at Andrew Hagenbaugh on Instagram. Follow our sponsors. And by the way, don't be a chump. Use promo code SLUMP. Save a lot of money at manscaped.com. Nature's Relief. Talk about Razor Sport. Caveman Coffee. Ways to save money, ways to make money. You know what to do. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. And we'll see you on the next one.